Hey guys, it's Steve with Muse Themes. Really excited today to show you a really simple but powerful widget called Interactive Scale. Now this is one of those kind of small utility widgets that you can hook into any sort of graphic style or element, and it just applies a really tasteful scaling effect to anything. So as you can see, I have these 3 circles on the page, and when I hover over this first one, you can see that it scales up. When I hover over the second, it scales down. And on the third one, if I click on it, it actually scales. So the scaling effect has an easing applied to it, so it's nice and smooth, and you can even apply this effect to state buttons. So this button down here, you can see that both the text and the button itself scales up. So again, this is just a really tasteful way for you to kind of add some emphasis to your callouts on your website. It's super simple to set up, takes 2 minutes to do in Muse. Now, you can also create some really fancy things with this if you're good at using state buttons. And this at the top is an example. So it just looks like a small kind of unassuming button, but when I mouse over it, we've done almost like this kind of circle flyout navigation. And this is all done using a state button and SVGs. Now you're probably wondering, how do I make this? Well, what we're going to do with this widget is when you download it from the site, you're going to get both the MuLib file and you're going to get the demo as well. So you can open up this Muse demo and you can explore how it's all done. So let me jump into Muse and show you how to make this work. I'll start simple here. We have just our 2 basic state buttons. And the reason we're using state buttons is because we've applied this SVG fill to it. The reason we're using SVGs as the icons is because they don't degrade in quality as they scale up. They're vector elements. So the first thing I need to do once I've added something like that to the page is create a graphic style for it. So let's create a new graphic style, and I'm going to call this one button. And I'll call it up, just like that, button up. And this one, the next one beside, let's call that one button down, just like that. Okay. So now what we need to do is drag the interactive scale widget out onto the page, assuming you've double clicked it and added it to your library panel. And let's just add the graphic style there. So button up, just like that. Okay. Now we need to set some animation settings. So do we want this to trigger on hover or on click? Well, let's go on hover for the scaling up. How big do we want it to get? So 1.5 is obviously 150%. So let's leave it there. Transition time, the amount of time it's going to take for it to scale all the way up. Right now it's set to ½ second, so we could go up to say 1 second, so it's a little bit slow. We can add a delay before the transition, so we have a bit of a pause before it actually does anything. I'll add a slight delay, 0.2 seconds. And now we have easing properties, basically controlling the motion path of this. So it's going to kind of accelerate slowly, then quicker, then it can slow down at the end, especially if we do ease in and out. So let's do that one. Okay, so let's check the first one and make sure it's working as we intended. So when I hover over it, you can see that it gets bigger. It's quite slow, so this may be a little bit too slow, but everything seems to be working perfectly. Let's do the same thing to the second one where we want it to scale down. So I'm just going to duplicate the widget. Let's go button down like that. Let's have this one go on click and shrink to 0.5, so 50% of the size. We'll have this one go really fast, so let's do like a 0.5 seconds with no delay, 0. And I'll just do standard easing. Okay, let's preview that. And now when I click on it, you can see it gets small really quickly. I like it a little bit better with a faster transition time. This feels a little bit excessive. So one other thing I need to cover on this is using it with state buttons. And the state button, if you don't know what it is in your widget library panel, and it just says state button. It's a way to group button elements together so their rollover states happen at the same time. So if I drag this out onto the page, and let me style it a little bit. I'm going to delete out that circle that's always in there. I'll make the button a little bit bigger. So the first thing I like to do with state buttons before I really get into styling is I like to give it a graphic style right away. And the reason I do that is because sometimes when you style it, then apply a graphic style, that graphic style can kind of override and do funny things to it. So let's just create a new style here. And for this one, let's just call it state button, like that. Okay. So now let's style this up a little bit. So let's increase our corner radius. Let's change the fill on it to black, and let's change the text to a different font and a different size. So let's go with something like Proxima Nova, and I'm going to make the text on this white. Okay, there you go. And now I'm just going to add a stroke. So let's add an outline, and we'll make that outline white as well. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is add the rollover state. And so if I change the state to rollover, right now we have just the fill changing, so it's just changing to gray. And you know what? That's fine for this demo. So let's duplicate another interactive scale widget, and let's apply it to this. State button, perfect. Let's have it apply on hover. I'm going to scale it up to twice the size. Let's scale it up quickly, half a second, with no delay. Okay, so this should work perfect. Let me just confirm my graphic style is there and applied. Yep. So let's preview it in the browser and see what we get. There, so it scales up to twice the size really quickly. Now, this is obviously excessive, but a little bit more tasteful example would be something like this. So this is great for calls to action, things like join buttons or sign up buttons or newsletter buttons, anything that you want a user to click on and be encouraged to click on. So that's the interactive scale widget. Again, if you want to dig through this demo file so you can see how we've done things like this, then it is included with the download package here. It's the Muse file within. So go to town, enjoy, and let us know if you have any questions. Thanks again, and cheers.